Hey, let's not waste any time. Let's jump straight into the critiques because I have got 5 images that people have sent into me for critique, and they're all architecture based as something different. So let's get straight into it. This first one here comes from a George Terminides. And I've critiqued your work before. You've made some really nice renders using polygon textures, so that's why I always see them. But this is a cool one, right? Okay, so from an artistic standpoint, looking at this as just an image that popped up on my Facebook feed, or someone sent it to me and said, "What do you think about this?" I'm looking at it like, what is my eye drawn to? What is the point of the image? What am I looking at? And because there's not really a lot of story, really you're looking at it just from a purely artistic standpoint. So a lot of it has to do with composition, which is where your eye is drawn to. And I think right now you've got some pretty conflicting composition, because my eyes are drawn immediately to this lamp, and the side of this white cabinet and the side of this cabinet here as well, which I don't really think is the point of this image. I don't think your eye is supposed to be drawn there. But then you wonder, like, what is the point of the image? What am I supposed to be drawn to? So I was thinking, like, it would actually be better if these lamps weren't here. And then, as it turns out, you had a render like that on your ArtStation. So I like this one a little bit better. Now, you could disagree with me. Some people would say I like this one better. But the reason I like this one better is that, for one, I think it feels more natural. Because they say when you're doing architecture photography, it's very, very rare that you ever want lights on in the house while there's daylight outside. Now, you can photograph in a period of time called the blue hour, which is like a 30-minute window right at the end of the day after the sun's already gone down. It's almost completely pitch black, but there's a little bit of blue evening light left in the sky. That's not what this hour is, because you've got way too much light coming in the window for that to be true. Like, I can see, here, right? That's too much light. So it's not the blue hour. So you've got the lights on for really no reason at all. So I think this one feels a little bit more natural in that respect. Okay, but then you've got this big patch here. You've got a bathtub, which isn't, my eyes aren't really drawn to the bathtub because there's not really much light going there. Now, the focus is really it's just this. It's just the entire right-hand side of the image. So there's a couple of things you could do. If you didn't want to change this image at all, I think it would actually be stronger if you cropped it. A lot of people always disagree with me when I say cropping. But, like, yeah, as an image, this isn't that good, right? There's not a lot that's going on in this image when it's cropped. But if you posted this as a series of images, like on your ArtStation page, you had like 20 images or whatever. So a lot of people do this. Like, if you're telling the story of a scene, you don't just have one render, you have a bunch of different renders. So this could be one of those renders, okay? And that's actually, they say, like, when I did the Architecture Academy and I interviewed a bunch of different people, that was one thing they said a lot of beginners make the mistake of, is they make their shots way too wide and they try to show the entire scene in one render. So it's often better to split it up, okay? But if you were to try to have it all in this image, I think you want to try to angle the light to be on this bath somehow, because there's not a lot, like, this cabinet isn't that interesting that I think my eye should be drawn there. And it's really drawn there heavily, because you've got this nice ornamental stuff, which is very cool, by the way. The marble looks fantastic. It's very cool, but there's not, I think, honestly, you should try to include this bath in it somehow, at least. So yeah, so I would do that. I would also work on the depth, because, like, the image really only starts like about here. There's nothing that's really on the entire foreground there, and then the image sort of ends about there. There's no window or anything else. So the entire depth of the image takes place between that area, right? So there's not a lot of interest there. And you could also have fun with composition. So you could frame it somehow. You could put a plant or some sort of object in the foreground here, and then maybe another one over here somehow. And that would sort of tell you a little bit more about the story of what's there. And then, not compositionally, I always get them confused. There's composition, and then there's compositing, which is grading is a part of compositing. So grading, the color grade of the image, I think it's a little off. Like it's a heavily contrasted image, but then you've taken the blacks and then you've raised them a bit. So it's crushed blacks, but then they've been raised, and it just feels a little wishy-washy, like one of those old Polaroids or something. It's not, yeah. Anyway, so I actually happen to know the render that I think this is based off of, because I do my research, you see. So I found this on ArtStation, okay, which comes from this guy, Ramold Shugnu. I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry. He's not even watching this, so it doesn't matter. But this is what I suspect you were heavily inspired by, right? And I think this was actually heavily inspired by a real, actual room, right? Like it's a real image that I think I found somewhere online as well. But anyways, it's a really unique, like black walls for a bathroom. It's very unique. There's a lot going on. The reason I think that his works better than yours, and obviously there's a lot of reason for it. I mean, one, I think he just spent a lot longer on it than you did. You said you only spent about 4 to 6 hours on yours, which is maybe it was a practice, thing or whatever. But the other thing I think his work's a lot better is that he put a lot more emphasis on the lighting, like the composition. So every single one of these shots feels like it's from like a movie, because it's been real, like it's properly framed. It's been careful attention to where the light's going. Okay, so for example, this one right here, which I think is probably closest to what yours is, you can see that he's used depth and framing. He's got these doors here, which there's not a lot of information going like from here, like this whole section of it. There's not a lot of information there, but it is something. It's telling you just a little bit more. Like instead of it just being like, oh, we're just looking at a bathroom in a room, it's telling you like, oh, we're looking at a bathroom through a doorway, right? It's not a lot, right? And I don't know why that should make it that much better, but it does. It makes it a lot better just having that extra element of telling us what else is going on in the environment. And as well as that, there's a clearer sense of focal element. It's a terrible way to say it. But you can see that the light has been very carefully directed right here. Right? And I think the other reason that his works, like yours is a little boring. Sorry to say. It's a little boring. So I tried to improve it a little bit just with the levels. So I crushed them a little bit. I felt it looked a little nicer. But as well as that, his has got more color to it. So yours, you went with like steel or silver everywhere, right? Like everything is silver. Whereas in his, he's got silver, but he's also got gold as well. So I think that definitely helps, and that matches the floor there. So I just tried to bump up the saturation on your floor there. It's not perfect or whatever, but I think it does add just a little bit more interest to the image. So that would be my critique. I mean, honestly, I reckon you could break it up. I'd move the bath just out of the way. I would put like the bath against a wall over there. I would have one render of just the cabinets over here by itself. I would have another render of the bath. Try and do something with the depth, and I think this one could be a lot nicer. But honestly, it's a really good image to start with, and especially for like 4 to 6 hours, George. It's really, really good. So well done, and thanks for sending it in. All right, this next image comes from a Michelle Zisman, and I really like this one. I'm gonna have a lot of fun on this because you put a lot of work into this, so there's a lot to talk about, and overall, I really like it. So the biggest thing I know, like I was looking at this image for a while, and I was thinking like, yeah, like there's something about it that's just, it's really throwing it off, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And I realized that really your image is sort of caught between two different worlds at the moment. You've got something which is trying to be artistic and modern and like something which could fit into an architecture magazine. And then on the other hand, you've got something that's real, a little bit dirty, a little bit more natural to what we see. Like you've got a cluttered bench there, for example. You've got an open toilet. You've got a scene which is sort of like realistic. So you've got the artistic, and then you've got the story-driven thing, and you've got them sort of fused, and they don't really fit together. So as an example, like let's have a look. So this plant here, like a real family, a real person would never really want to put a plant there, I think, that close, unless they were trying to be artistic and like thinking about light and feng shui or whatever else, along with this thing here as well, right? Like, this is a person who clearly cares about, interior design. They also probably wouldn't have this painting, for example, right? So they clearly care about it. But at the same time, like if you were having like an architecture photographer come around, you probably would also clear up the counter. You would maybe straighten up this bin here. You would definitely close the toilet. That's one thing I noticed. Like I had a look just to check it out, but I went on house.com and I had a look at some of the bathrooms there. They very rarely ever show a toilet in the bathroom because it's quite dirty. It's like no one wants to be reminded of that. And when they do show it, it's always closed. When it's open, you're just thinking like, ew, like gross. Your eyes are drawn to it, not in a good way. So definitely close the toilet. Okay, so now here's the thing. If you were going artistic, looking at like for a photograph of anything, if you've got a face in your scene, like what you have here, the eye is going to be drawn to that automatically at the detriment to everything else. So it can work okay, but they say, like in all architecture books, you never want to have a human being in your photo with a clearly distinguishable face, because that's what the eye is going to be drawn to. Now, obviously, people could send in me photos of like, look at this house on House with this edgy piece of artwork of whatever, Andrew Warhol on the wall. Like that conflicts with the thing. Like, yeah, if that's the point of the image, like it has to be done well. But in this case, it just doesn't fit with the rest of the bathroom, in my opinion. So if I were you, I would cover that up or put something else there. There's many other things you could do. Put a shelf there, whatever it is. Okay, the other thing, this plant here, I'm not a big fan of the plant. And I actually saw in your comments you were having problems with the transparency of the leaves or something like that. The plant is like, it's the only thing in the image with a lot of texture going on. So your eyes are really drawn to that. But yeah, it's not right. I don't like it. I think plants look great in bathrooms, don't get me wrong, but having it right front and center in a place that doesn't really make sense, it's a little odd. So I did a little photoshopping since I have it open, and I just removed the plant. And I think that it just feels a little less cluttered and conflicted. I would put a plant over here though, right? Like have some leaves here, some sort of stalk thing with like leaves that are sort of going out like that. I think that could look really cool. Yeah, I think that would look nice, but not like right in the center there. I felt that was a little off. Okay, so that's sort of the artistic thing. The other thing you could also do is maybe add in some natural material. Like what you've got is white walls, more white brick tiles down here, and then some geometric tiles down there, but that's really all it is. You haven't got any natural material in this. There's no wood, there's no rock, there's no marble, there's no cement, like anything with grit, with a bit of teeth to it. You want to have something like that in it because it helps to tell you a little bit about, for one, like it tells you a little bit about the person who lives there, what they like, but it could also tell you a little bit about the area and the wealth class of the person who lives there. Like if they've got a marble floor, then obviously it's like, oh, they're wealthy. If it's like cheap something else or whatever, you can sort of get an idea. So this scene, like if you're going for artistic, I think you've got to make it look a little bit more pleasurable or aesthetically pleasing than what it is, because it's sort of like if you were to have a look at like a renovation magazine where it's like a poor home, they've had a budget and then they did it up or something. You would end up with an image like this. It's nothing special, it's not outstanding, but in comparison to the before photo, it looks a heck of a lot better. The only trouble is we don't have a before photo and it doesn't really fit into that situation. So I think in this situation, as a standalone architectural image, you got to ham it up and make it more interesting. Make it beautiful if that's what you're going for. On the other hand, if you are going for story, so that's the one direction you could go, artistic. If you're going for story, I say you go further in the other direction. So I reckon you can make it all like mismatched, as sort of is. I would probably still get rid of the plant because I don't think that really fits the rest of the scene here. But I actually kind of think you should go this direction. Like make it look like an actual home, like an actual bathroom. And like go further, like add a little bit of like water droplet on the windows, because there always is on the mirror, right? I know mine is. Like you clean it and then the next day it's exactly the same as what it was. You could, there's always stuff like bottles, like when you've got a tiny little shelf, like I had a little apartment in Korea and we had a shelf like this, obnoxious, nowhere to put any of your stuff, but it was completely occupied with bottles of shampoo and all sorts of things. No windowsill I've ever seen in any bathroom doesn't have something on it. So it's always got some air freshener or something on it, right? It's always got something going on. I would sort of ham it up. And in that case, like if you're going for this sort of style, like maybe make it so that everything doesn't match each other. Because most houses, they aren't built like an architecture magazine, they're real. So I can see you've given careful attention to color. So you have got the same, what color is that? That color, that color, that color, that color, and even that. They've all got the same color. And then you've got the same color for this, you know, everything else. Hey, I just noticed a lone leaf just chilling all by itself. Anyways, so that's cool. But, you know, if you're going to go for the story element, make it look even more mismatched. Different colors and all sorts of things. Just make it look like a real house. And again, it's not going to look pretty unless you make it look really interesting. So that's a different direction that you could go, Michelle. But honestly, a lot of work went into this. People don't realize how much work goes into like modeling the candle wick or the bottle with liquid inside the bottle, and you end up spending like an hour on it, and it takes up like less than 1% of the screen space. And you go like, oh gosh, now I got to do the towels. Now I got to do the shampoo. I got to do it. And it just goes on and on and on. So really, like, hats off to you. This was not easy to put together. Even if you did take models from elsewhere, it's not easy to do. So well done, Michelle. This next one here comes from an Eddie Nerhandono. And you said you made this based off a reference and it was for practice. I like this one, Eddie. It's nice. It's there's a lot that's working well. I like the materials, and I think you're using the filmic blender add-on, so you've got proper highlights that aren't being blown out. This glass here looks fantastic. I think the grunge could be toned down just a little bit. It's a little overkill. I think especially the same on that mirror there as well. Like it looks really, really dirty, which doesn't match with the modern clean look of the rest of the image. Because that's one thing you have to note, like when you're putting together an image, you want to have consistency across it. So you're either going like modern, clean, lovely, or like run down, dirty and grungy. But having like parts of it that are clean and modern, and then other parts which are like really heavily dirty, just doesn't make a lot of sense to the viewer when they're looking at it. So you can definitely have that, but just dial it back a little bit. Okay, so artistically, that's really the only thing to really critique on this is, looking at the image, it's the focal element. Like what are we supposed to be focusing on when we look at this? And the light is coming in so heavily right here that's really where my eye is drawn to when I'm looking at this. That really blown out white area there. And as well as that, these colors. So this fruit here, that's also because that's one of the things your eye is drawn to. It's drawn to silhouettes, it's drawn to geometric shapes, it's drawn to contrast, and it's drawn to color. So having some bright color there, that's helping to misguide the eye, I think. And also, I don't know why they just sort of like I don't know what these are, by the way. I don't know what they are. They could be burnt potatoes covered in maggots. They could be, I don't know, maybe they're a cuisine from your country. Maybe I just insulted somebody's national treasure. But to me, they look a little revolting, or I don't know what they are. But yeah, why are these just like chilling on the table? Like they weren't good enough for the basket. They had to sit on their own. So generally you want to avoid fruit in renders unless it's like very deliberate and it's like one color. So you could have orange, but I think they would look better if they were in like a basket over here, maybe like this, and it's in like a net sort of basket like that, like it's a black basket, and then you've got the oranges in there like that. I think that would look a lot nicer. What could you have on the table? I mean, who says you have to have food there, or like the classic architecture flower or whatever? It feels a little bit placed. Why not have like a notepad and pen, or like a newspaper and coffee, or something like that? Something that's monotone. It's not going to grab your attention too much. So yeah, not a fan of any of the stuff that's on the table, I'm afraid. I think it's just too distracting. It doesn't really fit the scene. The other thing is that I don't like the curtains at all. I don't know if this was part of the reference image, but the curtains, they look really odd to me. It looks like they're not curtains, but they're like a big piece of fabric which has been cut with a Stanley knife down the middle of it several times. So it's like all flapping around. And then the fabric itself is like a rough bark or something like that. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I would definitely fix that. And then the other thing you could improve, like, so if you fix that, you fix the curtains, turn down the grunge a little bit, then you've got like a nice, like modern, sort of looking thing. And also, by the way, you could probably turn, like if you put the oranges there, tilt that sunlight a little bit further and you'll draw the attention right on the oranges, or try it shining on the table with the pens and things. But then you'll have like a nice clean render. And then at that point, I think you could probably, like a better background would match. Like this tree here that looks really, like it's out of focus, so you can barely see what's going on in the background anyway. And by that, I'm talking about this window, obviously. So this tree here is really nice, but this whole area here makes it look like it could be like in like a rundown area. Like, I don't know, it just looks like dirty brick and doesn't quite fit the mood of the image. This is personal preference. I know some people will look at it and go like, oh, it reminds me of my trip to Italy or whatever. It looks perfect. That's fine. But I mean, at least get rid of this red area here, because I think that's distracting as well. Like that extra saturation isn't doing you any favors. But yeah, other than that, I think it's a good image. So well done, Eddie. All right, so this next one here comes from a Soham Dutta, if that's how you pronounce your name. I think your name would go great as like the chorus of an R&B song or something. I don't know why I think of that, but anyway, it's just what it sounds like to me. Okay, so there's a lot that I like about this image. It's very clean. You haven't got too many colors going on. You've got a symmetry, composition kind of thing, which is kind of cool. We'll get to that. The biggest glaring issue that you have to talk about when you open it, because it's like being hit over the head with a giant piece of tuna or something, it's the wood. This wood texture. It's really it's like that song, one of these things is not like the other. Everything else in the scene is like clean and it's nice and it's pristine, and then you've got this wood panel, which you can have, like, I know the look you're going for, like the renovated modern house with peeling paint on the wall. Like, you can do that, but not this peeling. Like, this looks like a dilapidated, like abandoned house. It's been sitting in Detroit for 50 years kind of texture. So it doesn't suit the rest of the scene at all. So I would definitely change that up, and also make a note that the scale of the texture matters a lot. So I think it should probably be about half what it is right now, meaning that this should be no, I don't want sticky keys. This should be the size of the planks, basically. That's what I think, because I think it's like, if you look at it from here, like those planks look way too big. Okay, so that's the wood texture done. Now you want to talk about, like, okay, so this is like artistically speaking. So looking at it as just a piece of artwork from an outsider, what do I notice when I first get into it, aside from the wood? What else? Well, I'm greeted by two very large windows, and those windows occupy about half of the image. Like, if you were to draw over it, you'll see what I mean. Like, this is a lot. That's a lot of the image right there. So that can be okay if you've got something to say, if there's a purpose to the windows being that big. In your case, it's just like a frosted glass window, which is, yeah, it's okay, but and you've just got an image in the background, and that's fine. But it's too much of the image to be a photo, and it's not really saying much. So if I were you, I would get rid of one of the windows, okay? There's various ways that you could fix this problem, but this is one of them, and I think this is what I would choose if I were you. Get rid of one of the windows. Make the other window about 2/3 of the size, so cut off this area here, and then angle the sunlight Because then the second thing to note, like if you get rid of that, like what is your eye drawn to then? Well, your eye is then drawn to where the sunlight is currently shining, which is this oil heater on the left-hand side. I would personally angle the sunlight so that it's going in this direction, hitting this bathtub right here. Because I think aside from the windows and the wood, when you get the focal element, like if you get rid of everything else, like the bath is the center point of the entire scene. So you want to draw the light there, okay? Okay, so you will have this big wall here, by the way, to fill. So I think you should probably experiment with some different plants or look at some reference photos on house.com and see if, what other things you could put on a bathroom wall to draw to, so it's not completely bland. But, you could have like some interesting marble tiles instead, like we've got on Polygon if you're interested. Hey, Polygon, who knew? Yeah, there's a number of things that you could do to that wall there. But for the bath itself, so you angle the light there, but then you've also got this whole section here where there is absolutely nothing going on. Like that could be a solid color right now. It pretty much is a solid color. So you could break it up very easily with like a footstool, or like what are those stools called that sit next to baths? And you could have like a loofah on it. Loofah is a weird word, which I guess a lot of people don't know what it means, but it's the sponge thing that you have in the shower. Anyway, you could put some stuff there. Just something to break up that monotonous, completely solid color there. And then aside from that, I think you should be trying to tell us a little bit more about who lives in this house, because this style image, this looks okay for like an architectural magazine, but you have to think about from the point of view of an architectural magazine, what are they trying to sell? Well, they want to sell something which is like, people can look at it and go like, oh, I wish that was my house, right? They're selling the design, the materials. They've often got, manufacturers that are plugging their stuff, whatever. They're trying to create an image, right? But if you're not making something for an architecture magazine, if you're just making an image that you want to look appealing online to people on Facebook or whatever, or to people in the 3D industry, you want to be trying to tell a story. So who lives here? Tell us something else about it. Like what else do they like other than old wood, right? Like have, I don't know, some clothes, like some messy clothes in a pile on the ground there. You could have like a curling iron, right? Plugged into the wall. So, they care about their looks. Or just something. I can't think on the spot of more than that, but you know what I mean. Just have a think about what else you could put in this that could tell us a story. And then I think the image will be a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. But, as a kickoff, I think this is really good start, Soham. The rest is just mostly artistic from there. So thanks for sending it in. All right, this next image comes from a Peter Hermati. Thanks for sending this in, Peter. So there are two things that I think you need to look at when it comes to this image, Peter. One, from a story point of view, who is it that lives here? What sort of things do they like? What do they surround themselves with? What's their interior design choices as a person who lives in this room? And then the second thing is artistically. We're looking at it not from the story point of view, but from the, as an image. Is this thing beautiful? So there's two things to look at there. So looking at this, from the first point of view, I don't know who lives here. I have no idea. Because you've got a teddy bear. What color have I got there? That is a horrible color. Let's put an actual color on it. Okay, so you've got a teddy bear. You've also got like a picnic blanket, and you've also got like that old-fashioned floral, like grandma's house blanket on top. And then you've got like nothing in the cupboards. So it's like a guest room or something. And then you've got like the biggest roses I've ever seen, but you've got roses in the corner there, which also don't really make a lot of sense. You can have a plant on the ground, but it's got to be the right plant. Roses generally are a lot smaller, and they go in like a vase up here or something, right? But anyways, this, so tell me a little bit more about who lives there. What sort of things do they like? Is there artwork? Is there something, right? And I think you could also have a bit more fun with the materials. Like you've got it sort of reminds me of my parent-in-law's house, actually. Like, you know, wood that doesn't, you know, it's wood, but it's like cheap wood, and you've got like this furniture that sort of matches that furniture or whatever, and it's okay, but it's not an interesting image. And it's okay if you're trying to make something that looks real, but then you've got to make the rest of the scene feel real as well. So you've got to model a lot more stuff, a lot more things, clothing on the ground, whatever. Tell us a little bit more about who lives there. So from an artistic standpoint, if we just look at this not from a story, but like, what do I see when I look at it visually? There's no focal element when I look at this. Your eyes are generally drawn to geometry, contrast, silhouettes, and color. Okay, so there's not really anything that's contrasty. Probably the most contrasty thing is probably these windows, right? That's pretty contrasty. And I guess the bed, because there's a bit of texture there which has some contrast on it, but not a lot. There's not really a lot there that's sort of, yeah, that's helping me figure out what I should look at. So I would go stronger with this lighting. Yeah, I would just make this lighting just hit this bed right here, and then make the bed interesting, because if you're going to guide the eye there, you got to give them something to look at. So have an interesting bed sheet that looks folded the way real bed sheets are folded or whatever. So do that. And then what else? What are my other notes? So the colors. So you've got too many colors in this scene, which might not feel like a lot because it honestly feels a little bit desaturated at the present. But you've got pinks, you've got blues, you've got oranges, you've got greens, you got brown. I mean, browns is probably the most predominant color. You got some reds, and then more reds and more greens over here. So that's, and then obviously blue. That's a lot of color, actually. Like, the rule, I guess, generally is like 3 colors for a photo. You don't really want to go over 3. And that's actually really, really hard to do. To keep it under 3, I mean. So definitely having random colors there isn't giving you, it's not doing you any favors. Like, if I was to just desaturate that, let's just mask that out. I think, honestly, that looks better already. Just because it's less to distract you, if you know what I mean. And I would do the same over here. Get rid of these. The plant's not too bad, actually. But just doing that one little thing, I think, improves the focus, because you're not being drawn everywhere. Okay, so reducing the colors. The other thing you want to play with is the framing. So how can you use framing, which is like looking through a doorway, other things in the foreground, something that can move you through it. Like, how can you use framing to make this more interesting? So what can you put in the foreground that would be cool? Maybe have like a door, like right here, like you're looking through a doorway, and this is like all black, right? And it's out of focus, and you're just looking through a door, and then maybe a bit of a door on that end as well. Like, just that by itself is going to improve the image as well, because you know more about the scene than it just being a completely open bedroom. So play with the framing and the lighting in doing so as well. That'll really drive the composition. And then I guess other than that, that takes care of the depth as well, because it's pretty flat looking image as well. Like, the interest sort of starts like on the z-axis about here and then finishes about here. And that's not a lot of range in the image. So you want to try to stretch that out, have some stuff in the foreground, background as well. And also, this sky looks way too blue. Like, generally, if a sky is in a shot, it's way too blown out, because you can't have an interior be in exposure at the same time as a bright sky being in exposure. So it shouldn't be that like blue and dark. Like, that's really, you would only see that in space, essentially. But anyways, those are a few things there, Peter. A lot to look at, obviously, but just looking at it, I mean, I don't mean to be harsh on you or anything like that, because I can tell you probably maybe just getting your footing in Blender. Maybe this was a practice scene for you. Maybe you're just getting warmed up, whatever it is. I don't want to discourage you in any way, but you did ask for critique, and I want to help you because, yeah, I want to help people who want critique. So there we go. A big thank you to Michelle, George, Peter, Eddie, and Soham for sending in your images into this week's this week. It's been 4 months since I did the last one. I logged into YouTube and I was like, oh my goodness, it's been 4 months. It was supposed to be a monthly thing. Anyway, this month's Blender Guru critique. It's not easy putting your work out there on the stage to be critiqued by everyone. So thank you to everyone who did, and everyone else that sent in their work as well. I can't do everyone, obviously, but I try and pick different ones of different skill level. If you would like to send in your work into the next Blender Guru critique, you can do so by going to facebook.com/Blender Guru and then typing in a message to me. So you go to the post section or whatever, you just type in status and then click on add photo. You select your render and then type whatever description you want, but just make sure that you include BG critique so that I know that I can critique it, essentially. And if you're not on Facebook, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to be on Facebook, man, come on. You can do it on Twitter as well. So BG critique on Twitter, and I will find it there as well. That is it, guys. Thank you for watching. If you found it enjoyable, please give it a thumbs up. Bye.